Art Spiegelman's Mouse came out in the late 20th century, Part 1 in '86 and Part 2 in '91. It's a graphic novel about a man's story of surviving the Holocaust and the son who is asking his father to tell this story.
By itself, this is a great story. A man trying to survive the Holocaust against the odds and reunite with his lost love.
Outside of this simple exterior, there is a dark thematic lining that enhances the text from cover to cover. The theme of guilt is something that comes up in Mouse in a surprising number of instances and an even more surprising number of ways. The Spiegelman family, Vladek, Anja, and Art, being the author, present signs of guilt in their characterization, all intentionally placed there by Art Spiegelman throughout the graphic novel because this is such a prevalent aspect of his relationship with his family. Some of these representations of guilt are visual. Spotlights, stripes, sizes of characters, actions of characters in the background, colors of characters, and much more. The stripes, for example, are evocative of jail cell bars, equating to the idea of being an emotional prisoner, and the color black typically equals guilt, deceit, and secrecy.
These come up throughout the book, and you betcha Tukish I'll bring them up in this video.
What better way to talk about the guilt of the Spiegelman family than to talk about individual members of this family? Vladek, a survivor of the Holocaust, is an intelligent, resourceful, and stubborn man who was shaped by the experiences relating to the Holocaust. Possibly the most obvious effect of the Holocaust is the dehumanization that was forced upon the Jews during this time. They were given ragged clothes to look like everyone else, and they were branded like cattle with numbers tattooed on their body. This is something that also affected Anja, Vladek's wife, and led to her eventual suicide. Vladek lost his first son, Rishu, during the war from being poisoned, and this is likely a great source of guilt for Vladek.
A lot of the guilt that actual Holocaust survivors feel is the idea of not having a chance to save their loved ones, something that has plagued Vladek in this actual story.
Notice on page 83 of The Complete Mouse that Rishu is wearing a striped shirt. This use of the stripes references the guilt of not Rishu, but Vladek. It was Vladek's idea to send Rishu off to a safer place during the time of the Holocaust, though it would eventually lead to his death. Vladek has had to live with this fact and would live with it for the rest of his life, and in fact, the final page of the book envelops on this concept. Vladek is telling Art the final section of the story where he's reuniting with Anja, and he eventually says, "I'm tired from talking, Rishu, and it's enough stories for now."
Obviously, Art is not Rishu, and Vladek, in his confusion, called him by his dead brother's name. This pushes further the concept that Vladek has been repressing the trauma of his son's death for all these years.
Mouse expert Young referenced this, saying, "The still apparently unassimilated trauma of his first son's death remains inarticulable and thereby deep, and so it is represented here only indirectly as a kind of manifest behavior." Young is referencing that the trauma that Vladek feels is so deep and the repression is so severe that it not only makes him feel guilt, but it is characterizing him into the man that he becomes in between the time of the Holocaust and his death at the end of the story. Something else that has caused a great deal of guilt for Vladek is his wife Anja's suicide. Suicide is something that is a solitary act but has wide-reaching effects with the family and friends trying to understand what happened and questioning if they were responsible. During the story on one page, Vladek is yelling out to his wife, crying to his son. All of these factors contribute to Vladek being a clear sufferer of post-traumatic stress disorder, PTSD, or more widely known as shell shock, which is a reaction of a beyond normal experience causing clinically severe stress, such as the Holocaust. Vladek forces Art to eat every bit of food on his plate, and he picks up pieces of scrap metal on the side of the road. These actions are factors of PTSD, which caused Vladek to be stuck in the mindset of a man whose most important job is not to live, but only to survive. Anja, Vladek's wife, was also a Holocaust survivor, and this was obviously something that affected her dramatically.
Again, the dehumanizing effects of the ghettos and the loss of her family caused Anja to become damaged. But before this even happened, before the Holocaust even started, Anja was suffering from mental illness.
The postpartum depression that she suffered from is outlined on page 33 when she is on a striped couch, saying, "I have a good family, a fine son, I should be happy. But I just don't care. I just don't want to live." Rishu being born put her in as much of a prison as Birkenau would eventually be. While the birth of Rishu was a great sense of guilt and pain to Anja, his death was an even greater one. A common reaction in Holocaust survivors who had lost loved ones is the idea of simple bad luck. being that most children during the Holocaust did not survive. This helplessness toward one's self and others is common among Holocaust survivors. Art's guilt comes from a different place than his parents. Art, to contrast with his parents, feels guilt that he didn't have to live through the Holocaust.
The essence of this idea is that Art's life was so much easier than his parents' was. So how could he complain about a problem that he was having, or even enjoy a success when his parents succeeded in a no-win situation?
This comes from a concept that is common among the children of Holocaust survivors. Art takes this a step further in a conversation with his wife, Francois, in which he says to her, "I know this is insane, but somehow I wish I had been in Auschwitz with my parents so I could really know what they lived through. I guess it's some kind of guilt about having an easier life than they did."
The father-son relationship between Vladek and Art was strained to say the least, and there was a sense of inferiority that was instilled onto Art from his father from a very young age.
When Art trips and falls while skating with his friends at the very beginning of the story, he goes to his father for comfort. His father instantly compares this problem to the Holocaust, saying, "Friends? Your friends? If you lock them together in a room with no food for a week, then you could see what it is. Friends." This comparison between Art falling over and Vladek surviving the Holocaust is a summary of the relationship between Art and Vladek. At one point in the story, which takes place after the story is finished and his father passed away, Art says to his therapist, "Mainly I remember arguing with him, and being told that I couldn't do anything as well as he could." This guilt from his father is a key characterization of Vladek. Another visual cue is used in this scene with Art. When he begins the conversation, he is shown as a child calling out to his mommy. As the scene ends and he finishes his conversation with his therapist, he grows back to a full-sized adult, and this represents him feeling less guilty over the problems that plagued him during this entire book.
Prisoner from the Hell Planet is possibly the most important part of Maus that you can look at when you're trying to consider the theme of guilt. It's a comic within a comic, talking about Anja's suicide and the effect on Vladek and Art. It was done years before Maus was written, and in a completely different style.
This reveals the last time Art talked with his mother before her suicide, stating, "I turned away, resentful of the way she tightened the umbilical cord." Resentment is something common in the children of Holocaust survivors, as these survivors are often overprotective of their children, worried for their safety in what they think is a dangerous world. Prison imagery is all around, and the comic ends with Art in a literal jail cell, stating, "You murdered me, Mommy, and you left me here to take the rap." This is a declaration from his heart, almost as if he was writing down in a journal, telling his mother after her death that he feels and will feel eternal guilt for her suicide.
If anyone were to analyze the theme of guilt within Maus, it would be wise to look toward this section, Prisoner from the Hell Planet.
With a graphic novel so dense in symbolism and thematic material, it's hard to pick only one concept to look at. What about the drawing of animals to represent humans? Could there be more of an examination of the father-son relationship between Vladek and Art? Could Maus be seen as offensive in his portrayal of Vladek? There are so many things to look at and examine, but that's what makes Maus so special and so interesting. I hope you found this video informative and interesting, and if you haven't read Maus yet, what are you waiting for?